On March 8, 2014, a passenger plane carrying 239 people took off from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, heading toward Beijing, China. The flight was expected to be completely ordinary. The aircraft was a Boeing 777, one of the safest and most reliable passenger planes ever built. The pilots were experienced, the weather was normal, and there were no signs that anything unusual was about to happen. But less than an hour after takeoff, the aircraft disappeared. It didn't send out a distress signal. It wasn't found at a crash site. It simply vanished. A modern passenger plane, tracked by satellites and radar systems, had somehow disappeared over one of the largest oceans on Earth. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 became one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. And even today, one question remains. What happened to Flight 370? Flight 370 left Kuala Lumpur International Airport at 12:41 a.m. local time. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, operated by Malaysia Airlines. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members from several different countries. The majority of passengers were Chinese citizens traveling to Beijing. The captain was Zahari Ahmad Shah, an experienced pilot with thousands of hours of flight experience. The first officer was Farik Abdul Hamid, who was completing his training to become a captain. At the beginning of the flight, everything appeared normal. The aircraft climbed into the night sky and followed its planned route toward China. Passengers settled in. The crew continued normal procedures. Nothing suggested that the flight would become one of the most famous mysteries in modern history. But around 40 minutes after takeoff, Flight 370 approached the boundary between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace. This was supposed to be a routine moment. The Malaysian air traffic controllers would hand the flight over to Vietnamese controllers, who would continue monitoring the aircraft. The cockpit sent one final radio transmission. "Good night, Malaysian 370. The message was calm. There was no warning, no emergency, no indication that anything was wrong. But shortly afterward, the aircraft disappeared from civilian radar. At first, investigators believed the aircraft might have experienced a communication failure. But military radar data revealed something unexpected. Flight 370 had not continued toward Beijing. Instead, it had turned around. The plane crossed back over the Malaysian peninsula and began flying west. This discovery changed the entire investigation. The aircraft had not simply disappeared. It had changed course. The question became, why? Was it caused by a mechanical problem? Was someone controlling the aircraft? Or was something else happening inside the plane? The aircraft continued flying for hundreds of miles after disappearing from civilian radar. Eventually, it headed south toward the Indian Ocean, but investigators still had no idea where the plane ended up. The search area became enormous. One of the biggest breakthroughs came from satellite data. Even after Flight 370 disappeared from radar, the aircraft continued sending automatic signals to a satellite system. These signals were not designed to track the exact location of the plane. Instead, they were simple communications between the aircraft and satellite. However, investigators realized these signals could provide clues. By analyzing the timing of these communications, experts created possible flight paths. The data suggested that Flight 370 continued flying for several hours after disappearing. The aircraft was likely heading south into the Indian Ocean. This changed the search completely. Instead of looking near Malaysia, search teams now had to investigate one of the most remote areas on Earth. The southern Indian Ocean is massive. The ocean is deep, unpredictable, and thousands of miles away from major cities. Finding a missing aircraft there would be incredibly difficult. The disappearance of Flight 370 launched one of the largest search operations ever attempted. Countries around the world sent ships, aircraft, satellites, and underwater equipment to search for clues. At one point, the search covered millions of square kilometers. Teams searched areas of ocean where the aircraft was believed to have traveled, but weeks passed with almost no evidence. Families of those on board waited for answers. The world watched as investigators tried to solve a mystery with very little information. Without the main wreckage, every possibility had to be considered. investigators needed the aircraft's flight recorders, commonly called black boxes. These devices store important information about the aircraft and cockpit communications. Finding them could potentially reveal what happened during the final moments of the flight, but the black boxes were somewhere beneath thousands of feet of ocean, and nobody knew exactly where. For more than a year, the main wreckage was never found. Then, in July 2015, a major discovery was made. A piece of aircraft debris washed ashore on Réunion Island, a French island in the Indian Ocean. The object was identified as a flaperon, a part of a Boeing 777 wing. This was the first confirmed piece of Flight 370 debris. The discovery proved that the aircraft had most likely crashed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. Later, additional pieces of debris were found along the coastlines of Africa and nearby islands. Each discovery provided more evidence about what happened, but the most important pieces were still missing. The main body of the aircraft, the engines, the flight recorders. Without them, investigators could not determine exactly why the plane disappeared. Because so little evidence existed, many theories developed over the years. One possibility was a catastrophic mechanical failure. Some experts suggested that a serious problem could have affected the aircraft while it continued flying. Another theory involved deliberate action. The aircraft's unusual turns caused some investigators to believe that someone intentionally changed its route. However, no official conclusion has proven exactly what happened. Other theories involved outside interference or unusual events inside the aircraft. But without the main wreckage, these ideas remain possibilities rather than confirmed explanations. The mystery became one of the most debated events in aviation history. The disappearance of Flight 370 changed aviation forever. After the incident, governments and airlines worked on improving aircraft tracking systems to prevent another plane from disappearing without a trace. But the biggest questions remain unanswered. Why did the aircraft turn? Who was controlling it? What happened during the final hours of the flight? And where exactly is the rest of the plane? Despite years of searching and investigation, nobody has been able to provide a complete explanation. A Boeing 777 carrying 239 people disappeared into the Indian Ocean. A decade later, it remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of modern times. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was a reminder that even with today's technology, some mysteries are still powerful enough to remain unsolved.